Right, welcome to our school committee meeting, Tuesday, April 9th. We're going to start off our meeting with a pledge of allegiance to the flag. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for all coming tonight. Appreciate your involvement. And we'll start off with our superintendent's report. Emily?
Great, thank you. So I just want to give you a quick update on the MSBA project. So we've made some progress since our last meeting 2 weeks ago. The ad for the OPM services was placed in the Central Register, in the Boston Globe, and in the Hometown Weekly. We finalized our OPM RFS, and we got approval of that document from the MSBA, so the RFS has now been released. All of the necessary documents are posted on the town's website under procurement, and we have pushed out that information to any of the potential OPMs who contacted the town making inquiries about that, so they have that. The school building committee subcommittee that is charged with going through this OPM RFS process will be meeting this week on April 11th to prepare for the OPM interviews, which will be taking place at the end of April. So that is all off and running.
Any updates on your perspective on that?
Not at all.
Where's our chairperson of our building committee? Thank you.
That's that. Next, I just wanted to give you an FY20 budget staffing update. So you know from a prior communication that I sent out to the committee last week, that we're taking a look at the budget. And so April Albertelli, who is not here tonight, unfortunately, our preschool director has announced that she is retiring, which is sad news for us, exciting news for April. So we certainly congratulate her, and we will be saying nice things about her later on in the spring. Abby and I have been thinking about that position, and we are thinking about some ways that we may restructure the preschool oversight to include both a preschool director and also to put the preschool under the auspices of one of our elementary principals to create some vertical alignment between the preschool and the elementary school. So we're taking a look at that, and we think we kind of have a plan. Details still being worked out, so I don't want to get into all of the ins and outs of it. But the restructuring that we're looking at would result in 0.5 FTE that is in the budget that the school committee voted, that would then be available to reallocate to something else. So I'm putting that on the table tonight and letting you know that I've gone back to the school leadership team, the admin council, and we talked a little bit this morning about our budget process. As you may remember, I think it was 2 meetings ago, Tony had asked me if something happened in the budget and there was some additional money, where would you be looking? And at that time I said that my recollection of the process with the team was that sort of next on the list was to look at guidance, either moving the 0.6 counselor at the high school to 1.0 or looking at middle school guidance. So it looks like we may have an opportunity to go back and look at those things again. I reality tested that with all of the principals today, just to give the elementary principals an opportunity to say, no, that isn't what we talked about, but they agreed that it is. And so at this point, we need to have some conversations with Mr. Redmond, Mr. Bevan, Allison, Abby, and me, to think about some potential options.
And to that point, when you said either or, middle school or high school, so would we have the opportunity possibly to hear what the responsibilities are in the middle school, what the responsibilities are in high school, the staffs and so forth, maybe even from the head of guidance at middle and the head of guidance at high school.
Yep.
No, we don't have a lot of time.
No, but we certainly can do that. So my purpose tonight was just to say, So we plan on talking about that in May, and, you know, we would be interested from hearing the committee. I know some people on the committee had some, you know, some thoughts about this issue. That would be helpful to have that conversation. And, you know, this is where we were in our budget process. You know, we kind of had the list. You may remember that actually in the budget process, we found out we were going to get additional transportation money from some university station revenue. So we actually had already gone back to the list, and we were able to scoop up the pre-K to 8 social emotional coach. So that kind of had already come off the list, which was great news. And then guidance was kind of the next thing to look at. There may be other things that we want to talk about as well, so.
Is it going to be difficult to hire if we prolong this?
No, I don't think so. The market for guidance counselors is very good, strong, yeah.
Thank you.
So that's,
Any other questions? Thank
So
you.
we'll take a vote on that in May?
so I'm gonna come back and I will present my thoughts. I will try to get that information out to the committee actually before the meeting, you know, so that you can think about it, and then we can hear from the committee and figure out what we
It
want to do.
doesn't even have to be a presentation, maybe it's just if you provide us with points, you
Yeah.
know, what their responsibilities are, so we have a better understanding.
Yeah. That'd actually be helpful just to keep the process moving along
Right.
quickly. I could just send that
Yeah,
out to them.
instead of having them have to come and see us.
Okay, great, I will do that. The Q3 financial report is included, so Heath Petrarca prepared that before he departed, and Lemon Baptiste has not started yet, so I'm hoping if you have questions, they aren't that hard. But I'll see what I can do. The one thing I do want to point out is that there's an anomaly under the student services issue. And it looks like it's way over expended, but that's only because we haven't transferred the circuit breaker funding yet. So it looks like it's way overspended. The circuit breaker, the special ed circuit breaker. Yeah, it's, let me see where it is, I can show you.
Might be just worthwhile defining.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yes, it looks incredibly high. That's the one thing that leaks out. So the state circuit breaker, so circuit breaker is funding, that reimbursement that we receive that helps us to pay for special education students who are in sort of very high-cost placements. And there's a whole formula.
There is. It's a reimbursement measure, like you think of a circuit breaker in your house, to reimburse districts the extraordinary cost of a extreme expense. So you have to meet a threshold, and then you get a percentage of the difference. And we do this every year, and we receive quarterly payments that are received to the town, and electronically transferred to us, and that's what's coming for like the fourth quarter, whatever quarter is
Did
the
you have
transfer.
years when, the circuit breaker, we didn't get money for it?
We have years where the state gives us less, it's a floating reimbursement, and they decide it as it goes based on the state monies. And so we might guesstimate a certain percent, and they'll tell us less, and that's what
So
you're.
it's especially helpful when you don't anticipate.
It is especially
Right.
helpful when you don't anticipate.
The thing that's tricky about it is that it's paid in arrears, it's reimbursement, and so if we had, say, a high tuition payment, we have to actually pay the money up front, and then it's in arrears, so you're always budgeting it as an offset against the next year, so that's, yeah.
Is it the year or the quarter? So if we do something this year, do we get paid next year?
It actually is like 3 quarters in one year and the fourth quarter in the next fiscal year, Tony, that's not fun.
Yeah, yeah, and the funding of the circuit breaker is a big topic of conversation at the state level right now, right? You'll hear fully funded circuit breaker, that's what they're.
And that would be great.
Yeah,
Yeah, but some of that, some of that Medicaid money?
Nope, different
That's
product.
different.
Part of it? Okay.
yeah, that's what you voted to transfer last month, wasn't it?
Different sources.
Yeah.
But it's all special ed types of
Correct.
services. Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
And I
Thank you.
did just want to do sort of a rapid look at some student things. It's always helpful when we're going to talk about, policy issues, to think about what we're doing here. So just wanted to congratulate the students at Thurston. They put on a great production of 42nd Street last weekend. I don't know if you saw it. I was wowed by the tap dancing skills on display. I had no idea how many tap dancers were going to be there. So that was really neat to see. And I thought I'd put Chris up on the screen. Our own school committee representative participated in Student Government Day at the State House. Anything you'd like to tell us about that?
So it was actually really cool. So I was in the House of Representatives, so I got to sit in Representative Cabral's seat. And so we actually had two bills, one on vaping, and the other one was on prohibiting children under the age of 7th grade from playing tackle football. And they're both two bills that are actually in the legislature currently. So as students, we got to sort of go up and debate each bill, sort of like trade back and forth. And then in the end, we actually got to vote using the little stand they have at the table so you can see it all on the whiteboard. So it was very it felt very legitimate. It was the real deal. So it was a lot of fun actually. Both bills actually ended up not passing.
Really?
Yeah, they failed to pass, at least in the House.
Okay. Interesting. Well, sounds like a great experience. And Mr. Looney was with you, was that right?
Yes, he was my faculty advisor, so he actually got to sneak into the, advisors aren't allowed in the chamber, but he got to sneak in.
Advisors aren't allowed in the chamber. Okay, that's great, that's great. Thanks for representing us there. And I wanted to give a little shout out here to students from Hanlon. So this is Caitlin Pickering, our music teacher at Hanlon, and they provided the, I think it was a rendition of America the Beautiful for the Providence Bruins game. So that's very nice. You can take a look at that. And then finally, I got to participate on something that's, well, now it's called the Supreme Court. So this is in AP Government. It is an activity that kids do in class where they take a Supreme Court case and they research it, and then they come and they argue in front of the court. There are student justices and then also some faculty justices, and we ultimately make our ruling. Luckily, you don't have to then write your opinion, so you just give the ruling. It was something that was started by Mr. Schumann when he was teaching the government class, so it used to be the Supreme Court, and now it is Mr. Schur, so it's been renamed the Supreme Court. This was not the court case that I did. I think this is Engel v. Vitale, but I did Schenck versus the United States, and it was very impressive how well prepared the kids were. Their briefs were really well done, and the student justices were not messing around with the questions that they were asking of the attorneys. So congratulations to all those kids and to Mr. Schur. It was really fantastic. And then I'm moving right along. We've talked a lot about robotics and coding here at the elementary and the middle school level. And I just want to show you how it looks at the high school. So this is our first robotics team. And this was their video unveiling their robot for the year. Some very dramatic music. You'll see what it does. So that's the robot. Now I'm going to show you what happens with it. So the robot, I believe, this is what I've been able to surmise, that the competition had to do with getting things up to different levels using sort of a team approach. So this is the actual competition. You need to watch the left-hand side of the screen. We're part of the Blue Alliance. Okay, if you want to see what happens here.
A tough break for the red side. PVC Pirates securing another hatch panel on the Red Alliance rocket. Looks as though part of the cargo ship came down on the Red Alliance side of the field. That's a 3-point game with the Red Alliance in the lead by 3. But the Blue Alliance could come back because Red is down 1 bot. Going up and away is 35-97. Robo Rangers deploying the solar flares. Under a minute to go in the round. With a shot coming from the PVC Pirates. 3/4 of a minute. They're deploying the ramp completely on the Blue Alliance side. Oh, tough break for the Red Alliances. 5:01. They're going to the second level of the rocket ship, and down to the floor it goes. Red Alliance is up by 14, but wait. Here comes Persevere going all the way up top. They're climbing, they're gonna keep turning and keep trying to stay up there to come back. The Red Alliance of 509 up top. Blue Alliance has them up on top with 10 seconds to go. Red Alliance has 2 boats up, 1 on level 3, 1 on level 2. But here comes, at the buzzer, 1752 squeaks their way up onto level 1 of the platform.
There you have it. So, it was an exciting finish, right? In the last 10 seconds.
Holy
Pretty neat.
smokes!
Holy smokes, there you go. So some of that, the coding you're seeing grade 3, eventually it starts to look like that. It's really impressive. And so Larry Zhang, who is the student captain of the first robotics team, shared these videos with me. And I just wanted to mention that that student group is interesting. You know, they compete in first robotics, but they also have a written mission statement, and their mission statement has to do with promoting STEM experiences and STEM education for younger students. So they do a lot, you know, working in the community and in our elementary schools with younger kids as well. So that is really
Now,
neat.
wasn't it a few years ago, Westwood were the state champions in was it a high school robotics competition?
Well, let's remember it that way. That's what it was. I don't recall the stats, and I don't think Mr. Bennett is here tonight. I don't remember. I'm not sure. I know that we have done quite well in these
Well, I
competitions.
remember about 3 years ago going over to Martha Jones, and the kids were 3rd graders, were being taught by the high school
Yep.
kids.
Yep.
And then I went back the next year, it was the 5th graders teaching the 3rd
Because
graders.
I know, it's
It
great.
was
It's great to see.
amazing to see how they both were so into it.
So,
Thank you.
lots of great stuff happening, and those are just a few examples.
So speaking of programs,
Yes.
there was a tremendous program yesterday at the high school, which I wanted to just bring up to you guys, because my son was a part of it. He actually came home last night and told us about it. And it's unusual for a high school senior to come home and parents are sitting on the couch and says, well, he said, how was school? And, oh, by the way, let me tell you about this program that we had today. So it's part of what I have in front of me are 2 letters that we got from Sean Bevan. This is a program that's part of Courageous Conversations, which we've had at the high school for a few years now, but I think it was really the brainchild of some of the students, if I recall correctly.
Yes.
I think I know some of the students who actually started it. And so every year we have these programs, these various speakers that come in. So yesterday, well, a month ago, we got a letter from Sean basically saying, we're gonna have this program, they're gonna come in, it's called Speak About It is the group, and the program was Consent and Healthy Relationships. And so we got this letter that said, we're gonna have this performance, your kids are gonna be a part of it unless you think otherwise. And it will take up 1 block of class, and then following the program, the kids will have an opportunity to talk. There'll be certain kids conducting a talk in their homerooms about the program. So they had the program yesterday. And really what they talked about, my understanding is, some topics related to relationships and what may go with that. That can be, some of the topics were probably very uncomfortable, maybe for some of the adults who were in the room, as well as some of the kids in the room, but it was everything from date rape to what is a healthy relationship, what's appropriate. I'm guessing they talked about when no means no and yes means no. They talked about when it comes to, particularly I would say with girls, that, you know, girls tend to travel in groups, about not leaving one girl behind. But this is all in preparation for life, not necessarily now. So when you're out at college or wherever and everybody's out and one girl has had too much to drink and is hanging out with a guy at the bar, you don't say, well, she's fine, and you just go and leave her. It's about ensuring that everybody is safe. And so my understanding is the way that they delivered the message, this group of, were they students or actors who came, was that they used some comedy, levity, because it's a tough, there's some tough topics there. But my understanding is the kids really took to it, and then they went back to their homerooms, and it was up to the kids to lead so my son was one of two in his homeroom who was trained prior to this presentation to ask questions and to generate conversation in the homerooms. And my understanding is in some homerooms it went better than in others, but it was a really good opportunity for them to talk about things that are difficult conversations for us as parents, difficult conversations for them to have with each other, and I'm sure very difficult conversations for teachers to have, and not necessarily their responsibility. So it was good to have these folks come in. So I wanted to compliment the high school and Sean on this program, and I hope we continue to do this.
What was the grade levels?
So it was only for juniors and seniors.
That's wonderful. I think it's a great preparation for
For life.
going on.
For life and doing the right thing, being safe and being healthy.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Yes, it was for juniors and seniors, and I should say that this is a topic that kids in the planning for the Courageous Conversation series, that kids have communicated to the high school administration that this is something that they really felt like they needed some information about and that they wanted to talk about. So it was in response to that. And I want to compliment our acting dean of students, Ashleen Flanagan, because she was really instrumental in organizing this. Anytime we bring in an outside group to do a program for kids, we want to make sure it's high quality, and especially when it feels like something that could be a sensitive topic. And so this group was really thoroughly vetted, and Ashleen even drove up to Portland, Maine to see the performance and make sure that it was going to kind of meet our objectives. So
That is the cool part about the kids, they decide what the topic is. And also, I think Sean indicated in the letter too, that there's some programs that they may have in college as well, and other high schools are doing so.
Thank you, Carol.
yeah, so thanks. Great.
I just wanted to mention, in our last packet from Emily last week, I forgot to mention that she had put in there this year's student independent study projects.
Yes.
There's 14 of them, and they're there for the school committee to get ready with. And,
We still have time to sign up for those. When is it?
The panel discussions,
Yeah.
yeah, they're still coming.
There's still-
May.
But the students get to submit the idea of course, you have a mentor in the community and a teacher. And some of the most imaginative things have been done. And also is the listing of the J2 courses this year. I think there's 34 of them. Get a certificate in scuba diving. I mean, it's fascinating. So they're there for the school committee to review, and I think it's a
Take part in it, Cheryl?
compliment. Well, the school committee, all the parents want to take the courses too, so we're, and then I just want to also mention, I think we're preparing for our 4th year of the Dale Carnegie program, offered to the high school kids in Westwood. And it's, if you're being recruited by a major corporation to become a major executive out of college, they put you to a Dale Carnegie course. And to have the high school kids get access to this in town without having to go a great distance, it's a huge opportunity. And I think this is our 4th year, 3 years of 30 kids per class have had it. So I think it's, I want to appreciate the people who have put that together for a unique experience. And I think it's the only high school in the country that allows kids to take a Dale Carnegie course, which people understand what it means. It's a huge opportunity. I think, and nothing more for you, Chris, on any updates on?
No, I would just say, the SIP panels definitely, they start, I think, May 6th. So I know I'm doing one, a lot of my classmates are as well.
We're all sitting in those.
I love you. I've been working on civic engagement and education in the community. I'm actually gonna start working with some of the middle schoolers too as well. They have a new curriculum in place in the 8th grade. So I'm talking with some of the social studies teachers and working on getting the classroom, focus on a lot of like hands-on learning, sort of like engaging kids to learn more about the community and like civic responsibilities. I've sat on someone else's, they're working on a diaper for handicapped individuals. So they're designing a blueprint earlier in the year, trying to find a way to make some sort of prototype like that. Someone else was teaching STEM courses to, I think, 4th and 5th graders, 4th and 5th grade girls actually, focusing on like integrating STEM at a younger age. There's other ones like female empowerment in sports. I know one's working with outdoors, promoting leadership through outdoors. There's a wide range. No 2 projects are the same, so I really recommend everyone to check it out.
Do you have them on our webpage? people in the committee wanna check out?
I think there is a set
Can we
key.
get feedback from John Chancellor?
Yes.
Yeah, with all.
It's
Yeah.
really creative
Yeah.
things, and it gives good. Next part is public participation. Anybody who's here tonight would like to make a statement or offer us advice, please feel free to come forward. We just would like you to know your name and your address. Leave it for a couple of minutes. Is there anybody tonight who would like to participate in our public? Yes?
Sure.
Christina Martin at 23 Brookfield Road. I have two questions, I think. So you were talking about the possibility of moving some of the FTEs to a counselor at the middle school or the high school. What is the ratio of counselors at the middle school, and what is the recommended ratio? Like, are we currently needing?
So that's exactly what we're saying. We're gonna distribute that information to the committee so that we can take a look at all that. So I'd be doing things off the top of my head right now.
Okay.
So I'd say hang tight, but,
Okay.
you know, generally speaking, 250 to 1 is kind of the recommendation, and we
And that's
have.
the same regardless of grade? Or?
So it's interesting because when you look at the, when you look at sort of the industry recommendation from professional associations, they make no distinction between middle school and high school. I will say that our model in Westwood, our high school counselors provide college counseling in addition to guidance counseling, so I think that's a little bit different. But at the middle school right now, we have 2 guidance counselors and we have an adjustment counselor. So we're staffing 3 FTEs for 700 and some kids.
And then the other question was, is there any update on the status of the GSA at the middle school?
It's rolling out, I believe, the week after April vacation, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Another? Anyone else would like to speak?
We're drawing straws to see who's gonna go next. My name is Julie McDonald, I live at 145 School Street. I'm here tonight actually on behalf of several other Hanlon first grade parents that weren't able to come tonight, but are still concerned about the large second grade classes that are planned for next year with a shared assistant. Last month, 46 parents signed a letter that went to the school committee, and Mrs. Parks and Mrs. Cronin, talking about our concerns. I know other parents have met with Mrs. Cronin to talk about their individual child's needs and their worries for next year. So we're really looking to work together to try and find a better solution, so we stay within the 18 to 22 class size guidance that the school committee has looked at and endorsed, and are really advocating for a 3rd classroom for the second grade Hanlon students for next year. So a couple of questions. I'd like to understand, given the enrollment for kindergarten next year of just 24 students, whether or not the plan is still to have 2 traditional kindergarten classrooms next year here.
So I'd say that I can't tell you at this point exactly what the plan is. That part of what we were talking about at school committee last month. So we were looking at the kindergarten numbers, which remain in flux. We watch them very carefully over a period of months, and when we think that things have kind of settled and we have a clear picture of what's going to happen with that enrollment, then we can take a look at the big picture and start to make staffing decisions. So as you know, the incoming kindergarten enrollment at Hanlon right now is lower than projected, so there may be something that we can work with there in terms of resources. But it's too early to commit to that here, sitting here at the beginning of April.
So when would you expect to make decisions on what the configuration of the classrooms would be like for next year?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I think probably by June, we would have a good sense of things. But I will say in all honesty that there is a history with the school committee of occasionally deciding that we're gonna add a teacher and add a classroom in August. So, one of the things that we did 2 years ago, maybe it was just last year, we decided that we would not distribute class assignments until mid-August, exactly for that reason, so that we still have the flexibility needed to, make adjustments if something unfolds differently than anticipated, so.
So I guess just one note for your consideration,
Mhm.
that as a parent, kind of going into the next school year, waiting until August to know whether or not my child would be part of what I would consider an oversized second period class is certainly a point of uneasiness. So anything that, you can do to make that determination earlier rather than waiting for right before the school year would certainly be appreciated. And then my final question is, whether or not that first grade class has students from other districts that are contributing to it being a bigger class, and whether or not other solutions or opportunities for those students have been explored. I don't know
Other districts.
Yeah, so are there Downey kids in that Camden class? or
Westwood kids, but,
other, yeah,
okay,
other-
I thought you meant other
Yeah.
school, other communities. No, I don't know, off the top of my head, I'd have to go back and look. So I
Okay.
assume you mean from the buffer zone at University Station?
Yeah, because I'm just thinking within Hanlon, we're
Yeah.
so constrained within
Yeah.
size. And now, given that we are literally busting at the seams and looking at potentially oversized classes, do we have students from other districts in that first grade class?
Well, so the only possibility would be that the school committee created a buffer zone at University Station where students, Westwood students living at University Station could be placed into different schools. So I wouldn't call that from another district. That is in fact our districting plan. And when we place students from University Station into an elementary school, we are committing to leaving them there. So we would never take a child who has been placed into a school and then say, now we're gonna move you to another school, if that makes sense. We couldn't do that.
Okay. So it does create a particular problem at Hanlon, I think, given the size and the classroom constraints that we have. So I didn't know the answer, and just wanted to kind of discuss it to see if there are other options that we can explore. Thank you.
Yes.
Christine, sorry. So I also have concerns about the first grade class, but from a slightly different angle, because I would be worried about breaking the class into 3 groups because of the gender breakdown. It's a very, very boy-heavy class. And so I'm wondering, in the past, when you've had, or have you ever had a grade that had this much of a gender imbalance, are there any other approaches to help even that out? So, for example, I think if we break our class into 3, there's gonna be just like I don't remember what the numbers are, but it would be like just a few girls.
I thought I looked at the, I'm sorry, I'm Sandy and I live at 79 Brookfield Road. And I may be incorrect, but I thought the numbers for those 3 classrooms would be 9 boys, 6 girls.
Was it that close?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
Never mind.
I'm Katie Roach, I'm at 103 Parker Street, and I also have a Hanlon student. I have a first grade son who's in the K1 class, and first of all, I want to say thank you for being creative and for considering, in the past, how you did break the class into 3 for kindergarten, and then the K1 model this year has been very successful for my son on multiple levels, but I do have concerns moving forward, as other families do, with the size, but I'd also want you to consider sort of the opposite of what Christina said, is the makeup of, it's very boy heavy. So if that, not just on paper the numbers, but just the students that are in the classroom, and when we put them all together at that age with the dynamics of a very boy heavy class, what that makeup could potentially do for the learning environment. So that is just one thing to also consider, not just numbers on paper, but getting input, I'm sure, from classroom teachers could also help with the future decisions.
Thank you. When we say occasionally we make a decision in August, it's only because the numbers do change. So we just try to be flexible. There's some maps that we see in August that wasn't there in June. So it's not like we're trying to delay. I think we're trying to give you as much of a heads up on what's going on. But thanks very much for your input. We appreciate it. And we thank you for coming and telling us. Moving on to our action items. Discussion items. We're lucky enough to have here Tom Vitti, who's we're working on the town comprehensive plan, and Tom would welcome you to our meeting, and what can we do to help?
See if you could check if the mic is on. Is it green?
It is great.
Okay, you're on.
Okay. So I wish I had brought some robots with me to make this a more exciting presentation, but I am a member of the 18 members on the Comprehensive Planning Steering Committee. Charlie was a member as well. And it's my assignment from the committee to come and talk to all the town departments that have facilities needs. So I've been to about 7 or 8 meetings already. And as you can imagine, some people have just finished a building, some people aren't even thinking of it, and the schools are in the middle of a planning process. And so, as with prior plans, we're looking to get information and a written statement from you to include in the final product, in the comprehensive plan. And I've met with Emily to discuss how that might be done. But I'm here tonight to describe the process, maybe more in detail, and also answer any questions or comments that you might have. We do have a survey that's out. It's closing, I think the closing date is the 17th of April. It's available on the town website, and it's available in paper copy at different town departments and agencies. I think we've had 350 responses to date, so as many as we can get, that would be good. Because there is, public participation is an important part of this. There's also going to be a visioning session in May, I think it's May 18th. I'm not sure of the location, but there's a consultant that's been hired so that the public can come in, the town residents, and actually go through some exercises so we can get strong public opinion as well. It's been a while since we've done a plan. I want to make one point that whatever plans are put in there, it's not the committee's job to say it's a good plan or a bad plan. We're representing your interests to get all this information before the town. So any project would still have to go through the town's process for approval, whether it's through FinCom, the select board, et cetera. So.
Tom and I did have a conversation, and what's interesting, of course, is that the school department is talking about our facilities plan all the time right now. So this works out very well for us, the timing of this report. And so we have, and I provided in your packet, and I'll tell you, Tom, we've taken sort of a stab at a first draft of what we might submit for that, and have taken a look back at what was written 10 years ago, just to get a sort of sense of the approach. So I think we'll be able to give you something fairly soon.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity for all town departments to get their plans and what their needs are front and center.
It's just, by the way, there's one typo on Thurston's first.
Oh, is there?
On the second page, it says 2009 was the original building.
Oh, that's
Anyway,
right.
that's-
1938.
Yeah,
I'm
anyway,
sorry, I was a little
yeah,
off on that.
What's the, it's more of a, I mean, I've gotten the survey, and I've gotten this question from residents, I can't really add. What's the objective? So you put together this document.
Right.
And then, is it something to help us with the state? Does it, what's the?
I think it gives the town residents an idea, kind of a global view.
Okay.
But it's also something that you can use to kind of further your objectives. And I know that when I was the library director, I wrote that section for the library. It doesn't guarantee that something's gonna pass, but it helps to facilitate the conversation. You know, the town does have a long-range capital committee that, you know, schools have representatives on, and it meets frequently. But this is something, I think, that's broader in scope, because it allows for more public participation. It also it's the big picture. And some of these things may never come to fruition, you just don't know.
And where will it be presented? Is it that you're
So-
going to perform or?
So what the process is, once we gather all the data, which includes public and, you know, so just some statistics and the department's reports, it will be presented to the planning board. And the planning board will look at it. It will also be presented to the select board, and the eventual product will go for approval at town meeting. And that's what's been done for the other long-range plans.
it's also intended to give the town departments, guidance, policy of what the citizens would like to see. So often, people reaching out to people of recreation and things, what do we need? Do we need new fields? So the elderly, and all of the different things are being looked at. What do citizens feel? It's a valuable resource for just people to learn more about the town.
What would you anticipate to be a good number of people who replied to the survey?
I can't give you an answer on that just because that part of it is not my responsibility, so I'm not sure. I don't think it's anything that usually gets tens of thousands of responses. That's why we're really.
I've got about that many reminders.
Abby's doing
You're
a
right.
good job.
You're right.
I sent it to everyone in my book club.
Thank you for joining us, Tom. Thanks for your work.
Thanks.
Appreciate
I
your
look forward
help.
to seeing the report, and then, the next phase is I would get back to Emily with any questions that I would have and try to make it as concise and persuasive as possible. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
All right,
Appreciate it.
Nice to see you.
Next, we have on our discussion item, report of the middle school principal entry findings.
So Mr. Redmond is going to present to us tonight, and so I have the clicker. I realize, unfortunately, I don't have the right port, so I will be clicking for you. Just give me the nod. Great. Okay. Oh, yes. Already, I'm falling asleep with the switch here. Oh, and I'm at the wrong. You can do better than that.
Emily, I have a connect there if you want it.
Oh, do you?
It's up to you.
Oh, yes, thank you.
So, while technology's going, I just wanted to start by saying, thanks for taking the time to speak to me tonight. As it says in my report, I'm really eager to share this with you because it's been about the work of the year that I've done since going back to the acceptance of a job. And so my plan here is to share it with all of you tonight, and then I've already shared pieces of it with the staff for the most part in its rough form. And then in the course of the next few days, I'll roll it out to the entire Thurston community. But before I do that, there's lots of people I need to thank, and Emily and Allison and Abby are all people that are the first on the list for me, because we've had tons of conversation this year, almost every day. I feel like I talk to Allison at least. And they've been huge supporters of this work for me. The staff and the community, as you'll see, we're really involved in this. My right-hand man back there, Mr. K, has really kept things in check for me this year, has really helped me learn a lot about the school. And then lastly, there's a huge group of administrators behind me who I've been able to call up and just brainstorm with. So they've all been really instrumental in my transition here, and I love being here. I love Thurston. I love the middle school. I love just middle-aged kids. So I hope, my goal is to share highlights of the report, which you received, what the work, what additional work's been going on this year with you, that's not necessarily in the report, and then just talk to you about some of the next steps and needs, and then answer any questions. So hopefully we can get through this as quick as possible, and it's informative for you. So I started.
Is it on? Oh, there we go.
All right. So I started the year off opening with the community and telling them that this was my plan all along, was to come in this year and really learn everything that I could about Thurston. So I had these three main objectives. I wanted to learn about everything in the ways that the building operated and functioned. I wanted to learn about student experiences, and really what I wanted to do was get as much information that I could about the practices and the procedures in Thurston so that I can develop a plan that's in line with our district goals and outcomes. So that's what I did. So put a little wordle together of everything that's kind of gone on. So starting back in April of last year, after I accepted the position, I shadowed a 6th grade student, which was one of the most powerful experiences for me, and I think for any educator. I traveled with that student start to finish. I ate lunch in the cafeteria, bought it out of the cafeteria that day. I went to recess. It was a really eye-opening experience to the day in the life of a Thurston student, and really springboarded me into sort of thinking about the questions that I wanted to answer, I wanted to have answered and explore. So After that, I sent out a survey right before the end of the year, hoping that I can get as many staff members to fill it out before they went away for the summer. And I got a very big response. Just basically asked them a couple of questions. Tell me what's going well. What kind of changes would you like to see, and so on and so forth. From that, when the summer started, I started to meet with any individual that was involved in a leadership role in Thurston. So that was all of the team leaders, the curriculum coordinator, Mr. K, Ms. Gratian, all of anyone who was sitting in sort of a leadership position in Thurston. I just wanted to hear from them. I added on some people as I went to gather some more information, which was really helpful as well. Also, focus groups. I did 3 parent focus groups. I did 3 student focus groups, 1 for each grade level. I focus grouped the site council and the PTO. So again, it was, you know, a really informative process. Some trends happened and some, you know, contradicting things happened, which was really interesting. So in addition to those things, observations, of course, were part of the process, elementary visits, and then just reviewing as many key documents as I could to gather as much information. I have to say, out of all of my focus groups, the site council was really interesting because that group is comprised of students, parents, and staff. And so it was really interesting to hear comments from parents and then students express, well, wait, no, I wouldn't actually like that. So, and let me tell you why. So it was a really great example. So my first key finding speaks about the TMS culture. And so one of the things that I would say is, as soon as I walked in to Thurston, I sensed a really strong culture. And so I put up these pictures because this was one of the most unique things I've ever done with a staff before. These are pictures of the teachers at Thurston. And I heard from the beginning that they were a really close-knit family. That was one of the things that everybody said on the survey. Everybody said in the meetings with me, when I said, what are the 3 things that you feel like can't change here? And they said, our culture, the way that we bond together, the way that we feel like we have relationships with our students. We need to continue to thrive with that. The bullets are some of the words that specifically came up when I met with people. But this professional development session, I launched the year telling everyone I wanted them to take risks, and I wanted them to provide students with just awesome, unique learning opportunities that were engaging and exciting, and to take a risk doing it. So I said to them, I took a risk doing this professional development with you because those images were created by me yelling out different body parts that they had to paint with because there were no brushes. So as you can see, one of my teachers is using her nose to paint part of the picture, and then all of them are surrounded there with, and so they had to put together a work of art in that little bit of time, which was a really fun activity. And I wasn't quite sure how they would take to the nose thing, but they really loved it, and I told them that was like my risk, like to paint with your fingers, your nose, your toes, your chin, all those things. So, but the culture was just very strong, and I saw that from the beginning, and that was really what I wanted to highlight as the number 1 thing at Thurston. And it continues because it's also with the students. So the picture on the side here, this year we started greeting students as they exit the buses, and we do that in the rain, the snow, the cold, whatever it is. We have 4 teachers out there who greet students off the bus. They hop on there, they give them some information if they need to. It's something that I've seen done and have done in the past, and I talked to the staff about doing this, and they were really on board with me. And I explained to them that one of the biggest and most important things about this is we can see and make an adult contact with mostly every kid that comes in the morning, and that gives us information on where they are for the start of their day.
Is that just kids on the bus?
No, Mr. K's in the back drop-off loop with other staff members for walkers and drop-offs. So we have them in both spots of the building. So a couple other things about the culture. Parents, there was sort of this division about the feeling and the confusion about transitioning to middle school. How much independence do I give? And I really heard that, like, I want to be more involved at Thurston as a parent, but I don't know if it's appropriate. And we're starting to, like, we're struggling with that. And it came up in all of my parent focus group sessions. So really, you know, thinking about that, finding ways to keep parents informed. This year we do a monthly newsletter full of tons of information just to kind of keep the communication going. I do a lot of school messengers to parents, and so hopefully we're communicating as much as we possibly can as we go through the year. So that's an area that I'm kind of interested in just continuing to build. The 5th and 6th grade transition, parents spoke really highly of. They thought it was a nice, smooth transition this year. Students talked about how they felt like it was nice to come into the building with a new group of people who had different interests and than who they've been with for the majority of their educational life, and it was easy to make friends, and they just felt like the teachers were there to support them. So that speaks a lot to the culture and the parents. So we really just have some questions that we need to consider as we move forward. How do we continue to maintain this positive culture both for students and teachers? How do we continue to develop that 5th to 6th grade transition, and the 8th to 9th grade transition is equally as important to me. We didn't speak a lot about that during my focus groups, and so in some ways that was like an area that just came to mind when I was doing this work. Like, how do we ensure that we're transitioning students to high school with everything that they need? And then the last is really continuing to build that strong partnership with parents and all the stakeholders in the community. So my second finding, again, another big one, and it has to do with curriculum and instruction. So the math and science department, I want to start there because I have a math and science coordinator. And Katie Clark has worked with me and communicates with me daily on the work that's being done. I'm at the tail end of the science review process, and in a few years we'll be doing the math review process, and we're really starting to already start thinking about that as we've had conversations. And what we've been able to do this year because of having that coordinator has been significantly beneficial. She coordinates visits to the elementary, visits with the high school, debriefing sessions, learning what language is being used in math in the elementary school, and is that translating to what we're doing in the middle school, and are we then preparing students for the high school where we need to go? And I have really found that has been very helpful, because in the ELA and social studies world, my number one ask this year to all of you was to support the curriculum coordinator for ELA and social studies. And the reason why I've paired them is because I have a strong belief that we need, as many times as possible, to link academic content areas. We need to interdisciplinary plan. And by doing that, it doesn't just allow one student to walk in the door, close the door, learn math, leave, and go to the next one. Already Katie's been able to see, we're doing volume here and it connects in science here. And why are we not teaching those things at the exact same time of the year so that we're building on what we're learning in a more efficient way? So Katie's also put together some after-school offerings in the top left corner there. We've done several trips to this aviation flight school. That is a replica of the inside of a Boeing airplane. All the buttons and features work. Every student who's gone on the trip, we've taken probably about 80 students. I drive the van, Matt drives the van, we get them there safely, and then they hop in there and they get to fly, take off and land in any airport. And it's right in Canton. And they've really developed a good partnership with us. We want to continue to do trips like that. And so Katie's always looking for extra opportunities outside of the school day for the students to explore science and math. We did it for 6th, 7th, and 8th grader. Any 6th, 7th, and 8th grader that wanted to sign up. So then the question in math and science really is around how do we continue to build the rigor. One of the asks this year was around expanding the engineering lab and bringing in some more power tools and opportunities with that work. So that's one of the things that we're looking to do. And then math levels is a little bit of a question for me going forward as we come near towards the math review process, is how do we clarify what the math levels mean in 7th and 8th grade. Our level 2 right now means that it's a grade level math class, and our level 1 is an advanced math class. And some parents are often wondering, like, is level 1 where I'm supposed to be, or where my child is supposed to be, and is level 2 less of that? And so we really need to clarify the understanding of what those levels are and build on that. And so we're looking there. We want to make sure that students are going into a math class where they're ready to learn and not sitting there learning something that they've already learned. So ELA and social studies, we have new frameworks. It's a great opportunity to bring this new ELA and social studies coordinator on. I envision working really closely with the math, science, ELA, social studies person together as a really core part of my instructional leadership team, and exploring how we're going to work across those two departments and provide whatever we need to for them to be as rigorous as possible. So the third one is intervention. I came in and I realized early on and talked to Matt about where are the opportunities for us to catch students up, and also I think of enrichment as a way to extend learning too. It's both. And one of the things that we talked about was the elementary schools, and I noticed had specific roles responsible for providing intervention where we don't necessarily have that in the middle school. So we met with Diana Robbins, who's in the building, who was working more as like a coach for teachers, but finding it really difficult to get to all of them. And we talked to her about intervention, and she was very interested. So she came to us with the STAR assessments, which I've used for the past 8 years before coming to Thurston, and we piloted with 6th graders. It's a quick screening tool to see where they are with their literacy skills. And what she did was, with Mr. K, they worked really closely together on this, is they identified a certain group of students in the second half of the year, about 13 students, who she specifically provided intervention for by finding a spot in their schedule during like an X block or an exploratory period to pull them out for just 6 weeks. And after those 6 weeks, 9 students made high growth on the assessment when they were retested. And so now they're in the second session of that. And so they have 16 students this time around, 6th grade only, because we only have the capacity right now to do that. And so next year, the plan is to really go into a full year 6th grade launch of this, where there's 8-week sessions, 4 sessions for the year. There's a little bit of in-between time so that we can work schedules out and get the new groups in, and also provide Diana some time to touch base with 7th and 8th grade teachers so she can still stay connected in that world. So I'm really excited about that work, and a lot of that work Mr. K has been helping me facilitate, and I think it's going to be a great thing for Thursday. So the other thing that falls under curriculum and instruction is the schedule. So everybody talks about the schedule, and that was every question I heard when I was in the interview process. Thurston functions on a block schedule. It has 8 periods, 43-minute classes. A student experiences, and I experienced this when I was the student for a day, a 3-minute transition between classes 8 to 9 times a day. It's like, wow. By the time I sit down and get situated, I'm already getting up and going to the next thing. And teachers feel that, and I think kids feel that. When we think about this, it was very interesting to see what kind of learning experience was I having every single block. So maybe 3 of my teachers had presentations going on, and I was sitting there for 3 blocks, 43 minutes long, listening to presentations. And so I have done some things this year, and I'd like to continue to do more of this, where I observe by a team of teachers. And I go to a team of teachers that day to see what kind of instruction's happening. Are our students sitting there? Are they engaging in conversation? And really see what that feels like for the kiddo. Because it's stressful. It's stressful to transition that many times a day, for sure. And the other thing is we have the same classes at the same time every day. And so every 8 o'clock class, I have math. And every 1:40 class, I have social studies. And so some of the teachers would like to switch that up, and I think the kids would like to switch that up, because I'm sleepy in one and I'm exhausted by the other all the time. And so we want to provide some variety. So the other thing I wanted to highlight was we have this robust offering of exploratories, which parents, students, they all talked about. We've had chefs come in and collaborate with the Spanish program. You saw pictures of 42nd Street already, but that was amazing, and I think that starts from the 6th grade drama. We have students in the corner making wooden spoons in art class, and then I think our music program across the board is amazing. So I think our students experience a lot of exploratory offerings, and finding a way to balance our needs of this schedule with the programs and holding on to these is something that's very valuable to the entire community, students, parents. So we have to be really thoughtful as we look forward to that schedule. So some questions for Mr. Akers is, how can we make sure that this schedule supports the authentic learning that we're hoping to achieve in the district? What process should we put in place for this work that's going to make sure that we have the input of everyone we need to have input there? How do we create the intervention model so that we provide that extra support and the extension? And then lastly, getting this leadership team to design more of those authentic learning experiences with interdisciplinary planning as a goal.
Do you want to wait for questions till the end? Or?
Is that okay?
Fine.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so the number 3 key finding is structures. It's kind of a general term that I thought fit the best way. Teaming is the major structure at Thurston that I wanted to focus on. We have students in red and blue. And as the enrollment has increased, we've brought on part-time staff and some additional staff, which have caused the teaming model to not be pure teams. And so what that means is we have a staff member who will teach 7th grade and 8th grade, and a staff member who would teach maybe both within the grade level, but on both of the teams. And so it sometimes makes it very challenging for them to attend a team meeting because they're teaching for the other team. And so that's a huge piece of middle school life and best practice, is to have that small feeling of a team and a family where we're all wrapping around and having conversations about students. And so I think, as we come, the enrollment starts to shift, there's opportunity to get back to that, but then there's also opportunity for us to use those staff in other ways. So team size is something. Interdisciplinary planning, I can't say that enough tonight. It's that collaboration across the disciplines and within those teams. And then lastly, the teaming structure also provides this scheduling challenge, because while we team across disciplines, we also team across contents. And right now, our ELA teachers, they teach 4 classes a day, and everyone else teaches 5. So it makes you have the need to have one other person teach a 5th class for that team. And so that's one piece. Communication about student learning and progress came up. Just basically what that speaks to is how we want to make sure that what we're communicating with parents is that students are mastering concepts, that they're fully understanding concepts and they didn't just learn them for the test and then move on to the next thing. We want to make sure that they have those skills down pat so that they can continue to build on them. And so that was one major thing. Communication, just being consistent, making sure that we're really accurately, quickly, and efficiently communicating to parents. And then parent-teacher conferences came up a good deal. Right now we do this like speed dating thing. And parents can't see all the teachers that their child has, as you're nodding your head. So we want to try to find ways to revisit that. I just want to jump really back for 1 second and just say that my hope here is that what we communicate to parents is that students have set goals for their learning and they have a plan to achieve them. And just last week we had Travis Roy come to the middle school, and one of his messages was around goals and goal setting and revisiting your goals over time. And I think like that connected right with what we want to have happen for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So questions around teaming. How do we make sure we're effectively communicating across disciplines? How do we know what the right size is? How does this affect our teaming structure and therefore our schedule? And then how do we make sure that students understand those learning goals and how to achieve them? How do we ensure parents have the feedback in the ways that they need and help, and that it's helpful? And then also, how can we improve that parent conference process? The last one I categorized as social emotional learning. So we have an advisory model, and it's about 3 years that it's been going. I think about 3 years is what we found out. And so it meets about twice a week in an 8-day cycle. It's about 8 to 12 students. I have an advisor. I love meeting with them. I meet with them once or twice a week. It's always a good time. And I think if you ask Matt and I what our favorite part of the week is our advisory time. We come back like all excited, for what just happened. And so I really look at that time as the time where we can do a lot of social emotional development. We can build those positive relationships. It's also an area where it's not consistently being done across advisors, and I'm still really exploring why. some people are just more comfortable and have different skills to be effective advisors, and they view it in that role of social emotional learning. Some view it as what they experienced, which was an advisor for college or an advisor for my grades and my schedule. And so what I hope to do is work with the SEL coordinator on identifying the right model, the right program, what's the right time frame, what's the right consistency of meeting, and do we need a specific curriculum for that to be achieved. And so that was one, and then the other one was homework. Homework's also a very interesting topic. Everyone either says there's too much or there's too little. That was the consensus among parents. What students experienced was sometimes I have all my subjects gave me homework, or I have all my tests on one day, and some experiences were then the other day I don't have any homework. You know, so it was a inconsistent amounts. And one of the things that we're doing this year is I started to work with Sean Bevan at the high school, because he started to have those conversations, and then he said to me, we're talking about homework. I said, whoa, I want to be in that conversation. And so I sat in on a professional development session that happened a few weeks ago, and I'm bringing that same presenter back to meet with the team leaders and curriculum coordinator, and Matt and Ms. Gratian to talk about that as well, because I think it's really important in our lives too. So we're going to start to have more conversation about homework and what's appropriate and how we make it purposeful for students, so that it's purposeful for their learning and purposeful for teachers to get feedback on what it is they're learning. And I'm really excited about that. So I have lots of questions up there which are in the report, so I'm just going to kind of move on. Because that's it. So what's needs for next steps, right? So it's from our twin days. Last week during Spirit Week, and I thought this is like a perfect picture because I could kind of be a twin with that. TMS leadership team is my #1 priority going forward. Right now, the team leaders come together once a week for about 30 minutes. And we talk a lot about nuts and bolts stuff, and it's not really about the level of depth that I want this team to go. I really want this team to act as a review team and meet after school. I want this team to really help me dive into the problems that have come up and the questions that have come up, and identify the root causes of those and develop a plan. I want them to prioritize the work with me as well, because I need them to come along for the ride with me if I'm going to have any chance of making any kind of changes in the building, right? So with that, I'm thinking right now, do I have the right people at the table, meaning representation, or do I need a couple others? And that means people on staff already, so that looks like a stipend or something like that if I add an additional person. But that's my #1. My #2 is getting started with the ELA and Social Studies Coordinator hiring process. That's an important member of the team. I want to take all of this over the summer and get these people to work with me. And so I think those two things have to happen first before I get to schedule, because we need to agree on what our programs are and what we want as outcomes for those programs in order to drive how we use our time and why we want to use it. Just giving people more time doesn't mean that we're going to increase learning. So I want to be really thoughtful about that. I expect next year to really be that conversation, and then towards the middle to end of next year to have worked with them on what's the process going to be for the way that we work with our schedule. And then at that time, I want to bring in I would hope to bring in a consultant to help us. Because when we talk about schedule, it's very it's close to the heart. Everybody has a reason why they love the schedule and a reason why they don't. And when we start to shift things go or things come, and it becomes a very passionate conversation. So having a consultant can really help that process. And so the fourth and the fifth thing are those future staffing needs. Like I said, as enrollment's declining, and we think about reallocating the staff, that for me might look like a need to have another interventionist for math, or another interventionist to meet the needs of 7th and 8th graders, as we go down this journey of figuring out what's the most effective way to help students who are in need of both of those extension and remediation needs that are not on IEPs or 504 plans or anything like that. I want to catch them before they get to that point. And then the last thing is just resources in general. I felt like, just like the homework PD is an important thing that we're going to do, I might need resources around bringing professional development around advisory in the future and what we need as a staff there. So I put this at the end. I receive emails like this, and I share them with staff. And I took this one out of the batch of emails I've received this year because I think it speaks to Thurston and everything that I spoke about with you tonight. And I just hope that this is what we can do for the 750 students that are in our building every day. So I'll leave you with that.
Questions from our school committee?
Question.
Yeah.
So I think I would echo 2 points. One is the schedule, it's tough for kids, particularly for kids who have things like ADHD or, toward the end of the day, to always have those same 2 classes at the end of the day. I think you'll find the performance changes year to year in a class based on where it is in the schedule. So I would definitely encourage looking at that very closely. And then I'd also echo the advisory model and trying to make it more consistent, because I think different kids have different experiences. In some cases it's great, and in some cases it's study hall. So, but one thing we didn't discuss that I am interested in learning more about is, we have this one-on-one program with the Chromebooks in place. And I think overall it's been helpful to the kids, but I also think that there are some disadvantages to it, and I'd like to understand more, now that it's been in place for a few years, what the students think, what the teachers think. A couple of disadvantages as a parent that I've seen, so much of the classwork is on the screen, and there have been a couple instances where you have to read an article and there's no way to print it. And so the only way you can read this article that you're studying is on the screen. That I think is problematic for a lot of kids, especially if you're trying to mark it up or make notes on it. And I don't think I think that's sort of more the norm than not. The other issue is, particularly during homework time, unless as a parent you're standing over that kid, there's a lot of times when there's, internet surfing instead of doing their homework, and it's just very an easy distraction for the kids. And finally, the whole My Homework, Google Docs, Google Classroom interfaces, I think kids are still struggling with it. I think parents are still struggling with it. I don't think they have it at the high school. That's what I've been told. Do you guys use My Homework as a way of teachers assigning homework?
No, it's all through Google, so it's like Google Classroom and platform that teachers use, but just like Google Docs, Gmail.
Yeah, so I would just look at the My Homework piece. Anyway, there's inconsistencies between them. You have to go to both places to really get a good sense of where the homework is. So I think the computers, while clearly helpful and look great, that we're moving forward with technology, there are issues, and I would be curious, like I said, it's been in place for a few years now, to sort of get a look at how that program is working from different perspectives. That's my comment.
I had a question as well, actually. You mentioned earlier about I guess from my understanding, the math is leveled as 1 and 2. Have you looked at leveling up among other courses as well? Because I know some concerns among some teachers are that they'll have kids who are more advanced than others in the class, so you have the possibility of either losing some kids if you go too fast, or also losing some kids if you go too slow. So it's kind of a challenge sometimes teaching kids that maybe like level 2 and level 1 in the same sort of environment. At the high school, all the classes are leveled across all disciplines. If that's something you're looking into outside of math as well.
We're having conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Our 6th grade right now is not leveled at all. In 7th and 8th grade, we start the leveling process. So we're really trying to look at that and look at classroom work as we go through that process.
So would that
it's my first go at it now, understanding everything about it.
So would that be when you try to go over like the scheduling in the coming years, looking at that?
Potentially like integrating.
would just say there's some pretty different research in terms of best practices around that at the middle school level and high school, so we're pretty committed to our middle school model, but I think what you're speaking to is a need maybe for more differentiation in classrooms.
Can I say what, go ahead, Charlie.
Anything else, because you're our most recent graduate, you already did the issue.
I was actually down at the middle school the other day. I noticed it's definitely changed since I was there 4 or 5 years ago.
They've gone soft, right, since you.
My head's hitting the ceiling. But no, that was actually my only question.
I have a comment. So we've gone full circle on this level, because when my kids were in middle school, we had leveling. We did away with all the leveling, except at the high school, because we fought not doing away with it, right? So at the middle school, we finally decided we're going to have level math classes. So tell me, Emily, what's the difference between differentiation and leveling?
Well, that would be a long conversation. So, I mean, differentiation, I would say broadly, is much more flexible than leveling, right? The idea is that you are flexibly grouping kids, and that may change from moment to moment, from lesson to lesson, from unit to unit, and that within a class,
Yeah.
and that you could be flexibly grouping based on different things, right? So we talk about based on readiness for a particular skill, right? It could be based on interest. You could be differentiating. It could be based on sort of student learning profile, right? How best they might enter this thing. And you differentiate in different ways. So you can differentiate the activity the kids are doing to learn. You could differentiate the product that they're producing to show how they're learning, right? So I would say it's considerably more nuanced
So, but
than.
what you're saying though is that you're grouping them, but you're allowing them to move amongst groups.
Maintaining access to
Yeah.
the curriculum,
So I mean,
because
there's
that's
nothing wrong
important.
with that. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, and frankly, it's what elementary teachers do all day long,
Yeah, right.
right? And I mean, when I was in school, I will speak for myself, when I was in school, even in elementary school, you would have your reading group, you know, with your clever little name, right? And you would stick with that reading group for the whole year, right? That is not what is happening in our elementary classrooms. You know, for any particular skill or lesson, we may be flexibly rearranging.
So do we do differentiation?
Yes, yes.
In middle school, we are doing that.
Yeah, and I think that it's probably an area we could do more, right? So there tend.
I think that's part of the conversation we need to have around what's the program and style of delivery we want to build. If we think about some models of like workshop models, then we need more, we probably will need more than 40 minutes to do that, because by the time you deliver your mini lesson and send the kids out to stations, you need to have, like, if you only have one station a day, that's not effective. So you need that time to be able to rotate around those stations. And some of the other conversations we've been having is really thinking about where we're placing our math classes, so that way if they're connecting doors and things like that, those two teachers can work together when they have a common grade level class to start switching it up and grouping kids for that work too. So that way we're building it back and forth. We haven't gotten there yet, but we're having the conversations.
Yeah, I guess a few things. Well, thanks for this, first of all. This is great. This is, I know I've been asking for it. So thanks for this, I appreciate it. I guess a couple things. Actually, just one thing on what Maya said, I'd like to echo just on the Chromebooks. I don't have a view on the Chromebooks, but I know there's been a bunch of research, and there's actually, my understanding is a bit mixed. So, so I just want to, if we have that conversation maybe next year, I'd love to understand the lay of the land on the research, which you guys obviously follow better than I do. So two things. So one thing you didn't talk explicitly a lot about was instruction. Let me ask the question, do you think we need to invest more in professional development, individual development, on helping some of the teachers on instruction?
So I think that's what the ELA and social studies coordinator, I hope that, like, it's not just going to be curriculum. So right now what happens in ELA and social studies is we have stipended teachers who have full course loads of classes. And so their ability to go into classrooms and give feedback or talk or coach in any capacity is very limited. And so that primarily falls on Matt and I to do that work with the ELA and social studies teachers. In math and science, I think we're really, we've been having those conversations all year at a really great pace, where Katie's constantly moving around the building, visiting classes. She's involved with the engineering, computer science, the sciences, and the maths. Every day, we're talking.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? What are you seeing? You know, I would say we touch base probably 15 to 20 minutes every day, and I think that is helping us figure out what we need to do in department meetings, and then what we need to do as a whole group. And so that's one of the things that we, you know, I think that, to answer your question, that's where at that time, that's what those roles are for.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
and I agree, and I would just add, so that, you know, we would call that embedded professional development, right? Which is, I think, really valuable and potentially more robust than sort of the old PD model where you're like doing a workshop, right? It's like in the moment, just in time kind of coaching is great.
So when I read through this, and we touched on this, when you're talking about the team structure, so the team structure has been kind of an issue for years. It's very interesting. It wasn't in the summer. What team do you want? These team coach teachers. And it's interesting you brought up the point too about some of the teachers who are
Purple teachers.
on both teams. And it's interesting when we have conversations sometimes with other parents. It was almost as though they felt that, you know, most of the kids had one, let's say, particular English teacher on the red team. But then there were a few who had the purple teacher. And so it almost felt to them, I think, that they weren't quite in the team. You know, they didn't have the whole, so that was just sort of an interesting aspect of it. But are you considering, based on what I read here, what you're saying, the possibility of doing away with the team structure and going by departments, much like the high school, or is that not a consideration?
No, I would like to maintain an interdisciplinary team, but we really need to be thoughtful on how we do that because of the different numbers of classes being taught by different contexts. That's where the challenge is to keep it pure. And so I think has to be a program schedule conversation altogether. But I would really like a pure team. I mean, that's everything I've ever learned about best middle school practices is
the team,
is
because
a
of the
pure
cross-pollination
team.
between.
Create an
Yeah.
identity as a team,
Yeah.
you know, where I came from, we had names for teams, so, you know, I had a Trailblazers team and a team Alpine, and the acronym stood for something, and so you really bought into that family identity.
Wonderful final question. You didn't talk much about, I know, I've heard about it last, about sixth grade or vertical line or whatever the technical term is that I can call it sixth grade. What's your sense, having now been there a year, is there, you know, we have 5 elementary schools that come in, and not to talk about MCAS, but there is a drop off in sixth grade from fifth grade. What's your sense on that kind of question on whatever you call it, vertical alignment, the sixth grade transition, and so forth?
So I was part of the math process, and I visited 2 fifth grade math classes this year, and then had the opportunity to debrief and talk to the math intervention coach.
Christine Size.
Christine, yeah. Yes, and so it was really interesting because I started to like observe different acronyms or process for things, and one of them was a problem-solving process that could be applied at any point. And I sort of asked her about that, and I said, "Look, is this just in this school, or are all the elementary schools doing that?" And she said, "I don't really know." I said, "Well, it would be really great to know that kind of thing, because that's something that then we can carry on if we know about it. We can start to draw on that kind of thing."
Yeah.
So I think what I would like to do is make more connections within the language of what we're doing. That's why I think the interdisciplinary is very valuable. You know, instead of a student writing an argumentative piece or in ELA and then also defending in science, they could kind of be looking at how do we do these writing pieces together, and then what do those graphic organizers look like across. So I really kind of want to figure out that if we have that nice flow year to year, so we don't have that happen.
Great, thank you.
I just want to make one more comment. You talked about the teachers and everyone, you know, being like a family. I will say that I have had amazing experiences with teachers at the middle school. And in fact, today I overheard a conversation between my son, who's in 7th grade, and my daughter, who's in 5th. And he was saying to her, you know, look, in 5th grade, they tell you have to be independent, the teachers aren't gonna help you when you get to the middle school, you know. It's like, that is not true. The teachers really want you to do well, they really want you to, you know, succeed. They have a whole block where you can go and talk to the teachers. So, you know, that's just not true. And I think that's a really telling statement. I think that the middle school, you know, is filled with a bunch of middle school kids. But it also has really really strong teacher, faculty, you know, faculty, staff, administrative team, and I wanted to make sure that that got out there too, because I agree. It's I mean, you feel it as a parent when you're working with them.
One of my favorite days of the week is Friday when that music plays
Yeah.
on the loudspeaker to change the bells.
Any other questions, Michael?
Thank you.
No, this was great, but can we expect an update next year?
Thank you for your
He's
time.
got some back.
And I just want to compliment Mr. Redmond. He has really, you know, hit the ground running this year, done a lot of work, and things are moving in a great direction, so thank you,
Thanks
Mike.
very much. Appreciate your help.
Thanks.
Our next agenda item is the first reading of the revised non-discrimination policy, which we have here. And maybe you can help me, what is the acronym name, ACAB?
That's the coding
It's-
system
it's-
that the
yeah.
policy manual has.
Yeah.
So there's it means nothing, it means
Yeah.
literal like alphabetic coding.
It's like the Dewey Decimal System, but so it doesn't.
Policy manual.
A policy manual, so it doesn't mean anything. I do just want to explain what's happening here with the policy, just in case it wasn't clear. So what we're presenting you is a proposed policy that consolidates 4 policies that the school committee had that were related to this issue of non-discrimination, including harassment and retaliation. And so we have been working with our legal counsel, and we asked her to draft this proposed policy. And what we're just finding is at a practical level, we just need to bring the policy into, you know, one statement so that we're not trying to cross-reference different policies when a particular issue arises. And it's also, I think, just much more practical in terms of training people on what the policy is, if it's just one policy. So the bottom line is, of course, you know, if policy is going to be real and lived, people need to know what it is and they need to understand it. And I think that consolidating it will achieve that goal. When our council reviewed the policy and put this together for us, also, she felt like we needed to align some things to be, you know, current in terms of federal and state law too. So it takes care of that.
That's a good question, maybe just ask the outside attorney, and this is only hypothetical.
Okay.
So let's say somebody on your team,
Yep.
I don't know if you want to put, I mean, you would typically, when you go to an outside counsel, I guess, I don't know if you want to state something like that or not, but I'd just be interested.
Yeah, that would be the process. There are people who you can hire as independent investigators to come in and, yeah, and actually every once in a while, we even do that just because we think in terms of conflict of interest it'd be cleaner to, you know, to do that.
Now, do we, for the reading, do we just expect the school committee reads it? Do we have to formally read it?
So the plan would be that this is the first reading, right? And I think you probably want to waive the literal reading.
Don't make a motion to waive
Okay.
Second,
Second.
voting to waive it? Well, we will all read it for the next meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we'll post it on our website in case there's any public comment on it. And if, I would say that between this meeting and the next meeting, if any members of the committee have questions about it that you would like me to send to our attorney, I would be happy to
We'll
do
just
that
ask her
as
that
well.
question, if we should explicitly state that in the policy.
Yep.
About, there may be times where we go to.
Yep, I will do that. Yeah, and so actually, that's a good point. I'll ask her that question. So this is the policy, and then the next step would be from the policy, you develop an actual protocol for how you're gonna implement something. So I will ask her if that would be part of the policy, the protocol, or I'll let you go.
Also, maybe at a future meeting, we could have a discussion of sometime of the IEP, what information parents saw.
Oh, I have that
You
right
have it?
here. I
Okay.
forgot to put it on the screen, so I can do that. I can share that with you right now. So we Oops, that's not what I meant to do, sorry, I meant to present. Our Special Education Parent Advisory Council, our CPAC, had a presentation recently about, it was a parents' rights workshop. So I just put this information up here for the public. So the district funds the Special Education Parent Advisory Council's membership in a state-level PAC organization. And so the district and the CPAC collaborate every year to make sure that there's an annual training on parents' rights as it pertains to special education. This year we had our trainer, a trainer named Liz Topaz, come in. And so we want people to know that we have posted her training slides on the district website. And there is a YouTube video of Liz Topaz giving this workshop. It's not the video when she was in Westwood, but she's presented it in other places as well, if people are interested in that. And I just wanted to make sure people are aware that on the district website, if you're under district here and you just go to student services, our student services webpage, as you can see down the left here, has a tremendous amount of information for parents about all kinds of things, from our anti-bullying policies and procedures to how our child study teams work. We do, in fact, here post under presentation resources anytime there's a presentation at the CPAC meeting. So this is the top one here is what I was just referring to, the basic rights presentation. So lots of information, and feel free to call us.
Debbie invited me to the presentation that was made. I had kids with IEPs, and I didn't have a clue what was going on. I think maybe 30 parents showed up. There's maybe 600 kids in Westwood with special ed issues, times two, maybe 1,200 people should have been there. So if you don't have the time to attend a meeting, it's a worthwhile group. On the webpage is some valuable information for parents whose kids have individual education plans. And this YouTube program tells you what your rights are when you're going to meet with teachers for your kid, what you should ask for, what you should have. It's very valuable information for parents to know. So I just recommend anybody pass it on to others. It's very valuable information to know. And thank you for bringing people like that in. And the Special Education Advisory Group shares an awful lot with each other. Thank you. Next item is action item approval of last minutes, March 26th. Any
Motion to approve.
Any second? Those in favor? All right. Now, vote to accept the donation from the Norwood Bank for the J-Term program.
Yes.
Thanks to Carol's innovation and her fundraising skills, we're getting money in.
Shaking people down.
So yes, we received a very nice donation from Norwood Bank for J-Term for $500. So I'm bringing it here tonight in the hopes that the committee will vote to accept.
I'm gonna make a motion to accept that.
Those in favor? All right. Accept the grant from the Dedham Savings for the integrated preschool playground.
Yes, so
Another fundraising genius.
So we also received a very generous grant from Dedham Savings to buy new playground equipment for our preschool. So this grant is in the amount of $14,000. And so we are very appreciative and thankful of that. And I would ask that the school committee vote to accept that
And we're sending
$14,000.
thank you notes, all right?
Of course we do, yes, absolutely.
Motion, second, all those in favor? The next item is the superintendent's evaluation process. And one of my responsibilities is to take a lead in this with major assistance from Carol as we do this. But I think we're going to give out to the school committee members some of the goals and things that Emily had. And what I would like to do is ask each of you to give Carol and myself your feedback as school committee members. We'll put it together into a report, and then at some future meeting we'll be doing our vote. We vote on certain to give Emily feedback. So if you could get to Carol and myself your feedback on Emily's performance this year, we'd appreciate it. We have some guidelines on.
Yes, I made copies for you of the state model rubric for superintendents. It's a lengthy document. So I will hand that out, and then Charlie has also asked me to do a self-assessment and to, in May, give you an update on where I am with my goals.
Any other questions on the evaluation? Okay. We're now going to formally end this meeting. We're going to executive session to discuss things that are confidential that we need to deal with. So do I have a motion to end our meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
To go into public.
Go into public.
To-
Executive session.
Executive session.
I'll second it.
So, in favor?
Go.
Thank you all for coming. Appreciate all your help.